everyday people who are good-hearted by nature to grasp the level of indoctrination that comes
And
with
evil,
you know,
man, and evil.
Bill
Yeah.
Gates
Yep.
admitting the fact that he was like, he talked about how when he was 10 years old, his parents sat him down and they had a long, the first of many conversations about eugenics.
Yeah, I've seen this.
You know, and I'm like, does anyone know what eugenics is? You know what he just said? You know, this is the man who is parading around Africa with
Yep.
with vaccines, and he was a computer guy, stole the technology, made untold fortune, and now his concern is, quote, healthcare? You know,
Yeah.
like, and his wife is giving out prophylactics in Africa, and he's giving out vaccines. I wonder what their agenda is. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
And people are so in support of these things because look at old jolly old Mr. Rogers with the sweater on. You know, he's taking care
Yeah.
of African people who don't have clean sewage. And it's like, wait a minute, that if that was the case, we would just let the Peace Corps go in there, clean
Right.
the water, do normal. Like, I think we already have that covered. In fact, as you've seen, FEMA doesn't let people go in and do charitable,
That's right.
philanthropic things unless it's gate kept and behind, you know, these corporations and these shell companies, whatever.
welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I am excited and I'm honored to be joined by Jesse Friedman. Is it Friedman, right? Is it
Friedman, yep, you're right.
Friedman, a.k.a. High-Rez.
Yep.
Let me tell you about this incredible hip-hop artist and what he has been up to. He was born in the Bronx, raised in Florida. He's a hip-hop artist. He's known for his conscious, meaningful lyrics. Having moved to South Florida at a young age, Reg's music is the perfect balance of New York rhymes and South Florida bounce. With 5 mixtapes under his belt, a debut album, and a decade of experience and dedication in the music industry, High-Rez has been on numerous national tours, both headlining and supporting with artists like King Los, Cory Gunz, Riff Raff, G-Eazy, and many more. The culture of High-Rez's brand revolves solely around his fans and their everyday struggles and successes. Rez Nation consists of fans of all ages, ethnicities, and interests. He has many goals, but he set out to achieve them, and his main goal is to continue to inspire others to change the world for the better, which is what brings us to this conversation. High-Rez, thank you so much for beaming in, brother.
100%. Thank you for having me. And for the record, that is a great intro and a great. I got to get the bio updated a little bit. I'm glad it didn't say like, because I've read some of my bios online and it's like 18-year-old rapper. Like, it hasn't been updated yet. I've been doing this for a long time. It hasn't been updated for so long. But yeah, so all that was basically on point, and I appreciate that intro. And on top of that, man, I've been I've released a few more albums, and I've done actually some European tours headlining, and I've been a lot of other places. Not to keep padding the
please.
resume, but and as of 2020, I think this is kind of how we in turn got connected, through a mutual friend.
That's right.
But 2020 for me was the turning point in my career when it came to COVID lockdowns and mandates. But I started when I was 13 years old, 14 years old. I was making music more than half my life. I'm 30 now. But 2020 was that line in the sand for me that changed my whole career. I had a lot of things before that. I worked with McDonald's, and Mitsubishi reached out, and I was working with a bunch of major corporations and companies, and I worked with things that I'm not too proud to admit. I've done a lot. I've been in this industry for a long time, and I was young and dumb and and ignorant. And I've done a lot of things that I'm not proud of, but I don't regret because I've been on this journey. But 2020, I worked with Robert Malone and Peter McCullough and all these doctors and scientists, and it was because of these mandates. And that was the thing that I was like, okay, this is a little bit weird. I'm willing to throw my whole career out if that's what it takes, if that's what it means. I lost YouTube deals and endorsement deals and album deals that I was ready to sign, 6-figure deals that I was turning down that I really could use the money, especially. And I just, my not my pride, but my, this sense of, it was much bigger than me and much bigger than my career, much bigger than money. I was like, hey, if this is, I saw friends being fired and people, you couldn't go to I couldn't go to my own grandma's funeral, and families being split apart. And, I come from a very socially liberal, upbringing and background and city and community. So I never looked at anything politically at all in general. I was just like, I was very accepting of all walks of life. I still am. But like, I never really was political until the mandates happened. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is too much government overreach. And then we had these big events. I'm trying to compact this all into a couple of minutes. But we had these massive events, and we saw Black Lives Matter flags and Trump flags, and we saw rabbis, and we saw Nation of Islam, and we saw preachers and pastors, and black and white, Asian, Hispanic, Democrats, liberals, scientists, doctors, and all these people. It was the most beautiful thing ever. And it was more liberal or eclectic or diverse than any Democrat event in the history of mankind. And I started to open my eyes. I started watching these Trump interviews every day on TV, the briefings, and then I would see the news an hour later, and it was totally different. And this was just my awakening. This was just my awakening. Between the mandates, COVID, lockdowns, government overreach. My cousin, he passed away in a shooting in 2018. And I was always, extremely, like I said, extremely liberal when it came to almost everything. I just didn't know. That's just how I was raised, including with guns. I never really had a harsh stance on the Second Amendment, but as soon as my cousin died, I saw everyone around me, ban guns, guns are bad. And I'm looking here like, whoa. If this happened, the cops allowed this, the government allowed this, the people allowed this. I said, wait a minute, who's going to protect us? Who's going to protect me? And then I started looking into the Second Amendment, started looking into history, started looking into communist nations that they always disarm the population. So I started really becoming, I wouldn't say radical, but I started really becoming aware of all these lies that we were told as children and as teenagers and for decades. Just this slippery slope of government overreach and intervention. And once legislation passes, when it removes the rights of citizens, it never comes back without bloodshed.
Nope.
So that's the long story short. That was my 2020. That was my career up till now.
That's beautiful. So much wisdom in your words and in your perspective and what you took from that situation. I had a very similar situation. I don't know if our friend Nassim mentioned it, but I was very much wrapped up and dedicated hardcore to this identity of I was an actor, and a filmmaker, and I loved the craft. At least at the time, I absolutely thought I did. I kind of have a better idea of what I loved about it and what I was looking for, but. 2020 hit, and we were just about to start shooting a movie. We had this massive budget approved, the first time we've ever, not had to beg and borrow to get a big budget, and the lockdowns go down, right? And they shut everything down, and I'm like, what is, first of all, I'm aghast at this industry that is supposed to be, for civil liberties. I grew up reading plays that were inspirational and that helped, lay down the tracks for civil liberties and for equal rights, both for women and for minorities.
Right.
This is like the kind of history that I come from and what I think that, theater and acting and film can represent. And so for them to bend over the way they did and then say, oh, you're not going to be able to do anything unless you get triple jabbed. Yep. And I was like, with the audition's not in person. What what in God's name are you talking about? I just it was liberating. It was a slap in the face, and I did exactly what you did, brother. I started to pay attention to, because I was living in New York City, and there was a crescendo of loathing for Trump in New York City at the time, and I had admittedly gotten a little caught up in it. Sure. And I was aware that something was off kilter, because I heard, I'm going to try to shorten the story, but I was with a meditation group, and we were meeting in person back then, and we did this emotional cord cutting exercise where, think of one person, it could be anyone in your life, that just the name, just the thought of them really gets you.
Sure, I have one or two, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, I was like, oh my God, there's only one person, and it's the President of the United States. What the hell is wrong? You know what I mean? I was like, wow. So I was like, I have to use him, if I'm being honest. So I did this meditation, this cord cutting, and it wasn't this miraculous thing, but it helped me gain empathy and for Trump, and start to reevaluate, where I was getting my thoughts and feelings about him.
Right.
Because I was suspicious, because I don't have anyone like that in my life.
Sure.
So then fast forward, that's right before everything happens. And now I'm paying attention to what he's saying. And then I'm watching the news and seeing what they say he's saying. And I'm like, have they been doing this for for 3.5 years? Have they been taking everything out of context?
Yeah, yeah.
So I had time. We couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, of course.
I went back and I watched all the things
the good people on both sides and all the things that they started telling
everything.
us. Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, what a psyop. What a fucking campaign.
And that's what it is, man. Is no. It's someone like you, someone like me, and especially hearing your story, like New York, meditate, like we are the hippies, and we were the hippies, and we still are to some degree. We were the people that always open-minded, loving. The issue is the media plays on your emotions. They know that you're a good person. They know that I'm a good person.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of telling you the truth, they're going to manipulate the truth because they know that most people are good, including people that identify as Antifa or people that identify as Proud, but whatever it is. Oh, I'm the Proud Boys. I'm a this. There's a lot of terrible people out there, but there's a lot more good people. And ultimately, they play on the good people's emotions, and they know that, like you said, we are empathetic and we are trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes of, trans, gay, whatever it is, minority. Like they know that if you're a good person and you're trying to do good things, ultimately, no matter if you support AOC or you support Donald Trump, the media is going to manipulate those emotions. And I think the people that woke up from that, it's really a blessing, because a lot of people just can't and won't, and if you didn't do it in 2020, I don't really know what hope there is for you. You're going to be the first one to the slaughterhouse, God forbid.
Yeah. But it's such a great point you make. Everybody thinks that they're on the right side.
Right.
I don't think there's 99.9% of people don't think for a moment that they got it, they got it wrong. They think that they're doing good, and that's important to remember. And that is what they play off. It's a great, great insight you shared. The media plays off the fact that they know damn well that people are good-natured. Mm-hmm. I think that's human nature. I never bought into, I was raised Catholic, and they're like, the baby is
right,
dirty.
The baby's born a sinner. The baby's a terrible human.
And I never understood how the most pure, innocent thing could, what that was about. And I never believed in it. And I really believe that human beings are good by nature, compassionate.
I agree.
By nature, and that we have to be taught and conditioned and traumatized into these other ways of thinking and being.
You know what it was for me too, was seeing you just in this. I haven't seen you in real life. I could tell you're a fairly in shape guy, and I think Bobby Kennedy was a big one for me. Seeing I supported him in general. I met him through these mandates with Robert Malone and all these people. So I got to not know him, but I was in the same rooms as him, and we've met. And I knew what he stood for as far as for the vaccine schedules for kids, and as far as fluoride in the water and atrazine and health in general. And I'm not a jacked guy, but I've always been in the gym, and I've been physically fit, and I get sun, and I take supplements and vitamins, and I've always lived a relatively healthy lifestyle. I don't eat fast food for over a decade, despite me. Like I said, I worked for McDonald's back in the day. I was a young kid, but I'm fairly healthy. And to me, seeing that the COVID vaccines and masks and all these and staying indoors, it wasn't scientific. And they never said that it was about, like, they were like, if I'm like, hey, I'm young and I'm healthy and I'm fit, they're like, it doesn't matter. And it's like, wait a minute, but I'm not obese and I get sun and I'm in the gym, it doesn't matter, and eventually the truth came out, and I think a lot of people are kind of burying their head in the sand because they feel embarrassed that you were right or I was right, or a lot of people were just right about, because science and God, whatever you want to look at it, they're both synonymous. Some people like to choose one or the other, but science and God aren't wrong. And ultimately, things are ever changing. Sure, science is ever changing. It was so funny when trust the science. I am the science. Yeah. And it's like as if it never changes, as if it's never changed. But
unreal.
But they also love to tell you that it does change and evolve when it benefits their agenda. And we learned that the science was, TM was a corporation. It wasn't
exactly.
It wasn't something that we studied in a textbook anymore.
It was a sales pitch all along, and a deceptive and nefarious one at that.
It was scary. And you look into the fact that America, I think there's like us and maybe Australia or New Zealand, there's only a couple countries that advertise, big pharma on TV.
That's
and
right.
It's only since the 80s or 90s. It's only 30 or 40 years. And, it's a relatively kind of dystopian thing. When I go to Europe and I'm touring and I put on the TV, you don't see that at all. You still see terrible foods and fast food and stuff like that. But, you don't see big, like every 3 commercials or 4 commercials, it's like, have you or a loved one been blah, 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 hurt? And the next one is, do you have a headache? Well, you might get cancer, but we'll cure your headache. And then they talk really fast for the end.
Yeah.
And then
side effects include. You're like, wait a minute. You used the last 30 seconds of the commercial telling me all the ways that this thing is going to make me sick.
And most people don't care, I guess. People want an easy way out. At the end of the day, people want a quick pill to fix whatever issues they have, because, as we just full circle, they don't want to get sun, they don't want to drink water, they don't want to
supplement.
They don't want to supplement. They don't want to go to the gym. Which is why I love kind of long story long, which is why I love Bobby
You're
Kennedy.
Good. You got time.
I love Bobby Kennedy, man. I love what he stands for. I love that he and Trump teamed up. I love the fact that, these are all former Democrats like myself, in Tulsi Gabbard, in Bobby Kennedy, in Trump himself, in Elon Musk, in Russell Brand, in Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can you look at all of these people and not question your own party and question that there's a cultural realignment? Instead, it's like people are just, it's their tribe. The Democrats are my tribe. Don't get me wrong, it happens on the right as well. There are some upset people to see that it's a lot less, but there are some upset old Christian classic conservatives that are angry that their party's becoming more liberal. So we saw the left become communist, become strangely tyrannical, and we're also to some degree I just last week had a conversation with the old school classic Christian conservative. We don't agree on all the abortion, right? We don't agree on marijuana, but we agree on free speech, and we agree on the Second Amendment, and we agree. So but what he brought up was, we used to be able to have this conversation on the left. It was more open-minded. It was more about free speech. It was more anti-big pharma. I remember there was a time the ACLU was allowing for the Ku Klux Klan to have meetings and it's like, hey, if we infringe on their speech, then they'll infringe on our speech, and it's a slippery slope. And these were liberals, these were these were Democrats, and I think a lot of us have had this awakening over the last 4 or 5 years. I don't think our policies have changed or our beliefs have changed. Maybe to some degree, like I said, I've become more conservative. I just had a baby. I'm a little bit more hesitant when it comes to having this abortion discussion. As far as that, I'm much more pro Second Amendment now. So I think my values have shifted a little bit, but ultimately I think that you look at the Bill Maher's of the world. These are classic liberals that they're looking around and they're like, what has my party become? And I think it's a shame that people can't just wake up and see that, like I said, that there is a cultural realignment happening, because it's so exciting. And for you to be blind to this and not a part of it, I almost feel bad for you.
It speaks to the power of the psyop and the campaigns that they do.
Yeah, true.
And the effectiveness of what they did with Trump over the course of 4 years cannot be understated. I mean, there are people out there who they really have no real idea why they hate him so much. They don't understand. Most. They've been programmed. Yep. And if you're like me and you've gone down this rabbit hole too many times to speak of, you understand just how effective MK Ultra is and continues to be and was, and what they were able to do with that. And when you learn what they could do with that way back in like 1959, when they were just honing with their capacity to really make and convince people to do just about anything they wanted to, and even to the point where they would have no true conscious recollection of what they have done.
Crazy.
And I'm talking about shit like blow up a building, and everyday people. But there's a small percentage of people who are going to be susceptible to that kind of hypnosis, because that's what it is at its core.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And it's like you were saying about the pharmaceuticals. And I was telling my audience this the other night. I'm like, listen, do you know why they play those at night? I learned this. Dr. Joe Dispenza told me this, but he was like, they play that at night because they know they have the data that that's when your brain waves slip into, you're kind of falling asleep on the couch and your brain becomes very suggestible because, theta brainwave states you become very suggestible. Wow. So that's when they hit you with you're going to get shingles and you're like, you see it and it just plugs into your brain like a bug.
It scares me, man, thinking about it.
Yeah.
I grew up like that in a sense, not me personally, but as far as my mom and who was in charge of my autonomy, I guess, as a young kid. And I got every vaccine in the book, bro. And as I got older and I finally kind of went off on my own, and I didn't go to college, but I went off with my friends and my girlfriend, who's my wife at the time, and I finally was able to kind of choose my own path in my own life. And I remember I actually did get shingles, even though I got the shingles vaccine, and even though I got all the other vaccines in my life, and bro, I even got the Gardasil vaccine, which was like they finally decided to say, well, I guess it's for men today, and my mom's like, go get it. But long story short, man, is my mom is one of those women, and the Bible says, honor your mother and father. At the end of the day, I will always respect. My mother gave me life, my father gave me life. Even if they spit in your face and they're terrible to you, they gave you life, and I always, to some degree, you have to respect your parents. That's how I look at it. But my mom always was up late nights, TV on, no matter what, and now still to this day, even though she's in her 70s, and my dad, I'll go in their room when I go home to visit, and I'll see, and my mom will just be like this at midnight with a phone in her face with Facebook and news, and see it like this, and you see the blue light just coming in your eyes.
Oh boy.
And once I've learned about that, man, you're absolutely right. And to hear you say it, it makes a lot of sense. And so what I was saying is I got a little older, and I actually ended up having ulcers. I had stomach issues. I had all gastrointestinal issues. Bro, I had so many colonoscopies and endoscopies. I was on so many pharmaceutical pills. I was depressed and anxious for so long, and I couldn't connect the dots that it was all a full circle. What was happening is I thought it was a health issue, and then I had to self-medicate, and then I started self-medicating. I started getting drugs on the street, and then eventually I basically cold turkeyed everything. Not everything. I was drinking for a while. I stopped also, but I cold turkeyed all pharmaceutical stuff because there was a time where I took a Xanax that was laced with fentanyl, and I had no idea, and I was still self-medicating. Like I don't want to put myself on a pedestal and say, oh, I'm better than a drug. Like I was truly self-medicating myself. I wasn't like trying to go into a coma and kill myself and die. Like I was genuinely self-medicating. Not that.
Yeah, you had anxiety and you were trying to deal with it.
And I was trying to dose it correctly. And I wasn't popping a bunch and like just laying there like a zombie. I was truly trying to self-medicate because I could no longer get these. I would have a surgery on my. I was literally, bro. I had exploratory. Like I was literally a test like a lab rat, bro, for 4 or 5 years straight. And just like even thinking back on it, it bothers me to think about it. And it's I don't know. I don't even want. I hate to get into the subject of parents and stuff like I said, because at the end of the day, this made me who I am. This gave me the strength that I had to overcome. I finally understood. We can talk about music in a second, but if you listen to any of my music, it's always about overcoming a struggle. It's always about turning to God. Even before I was religious in any sense, it's always about putting your faith in a higher power and trust and love and whatever. And that's why my audience is the way they are. Is I have a lot of people who are either sober or getting sober. Like that record "Someday" you were talking about before we went on here. A lot of my records are just hopeful to people. But if you go back to some of my other music, it was more angry because that was how I expressed myself as 19, 20-year-old kid. I'm talking about doing drugs. I'm talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll because it wasn't from a party like a glorifying way. It was like that's just all I knew and all I was able to do. And I had a lot of terrible people around me, a lot of people eating off me at the same time. All my money was going towards their drug habits, my manager, my bad lawyers, bad agents, bad DJs and producers. And I'm just this young kid being taken advantage of by everyone every step of the way. And then thank God, I overcame all of that. My wife was looking out for me, who was my girlfriend at the time. I cut off a lot of people in my life. I turned towards faith and God and religion in the last 4 or 5 years. It's been 7 or 8 years since since that fentanyl moment. I've also not drank for a long time now. So my life is night and day compared to what
evolution.
It was.
That's evolution, bro. That coming through a dark night like that. I had a similar experience. Was struggling very much, and I was. I can't say I found religion, but I found God. I found spirituality. I found the divine, and I found ways to medicate that were not nearly as unhealthy as the habits that I had picked up.
100%.
And I started to replace those habits that were out of control, and also that I hated myself for having. I was struggling in a lot of ways, and went through a lot of different, both like groups, anonymous, and also different teachers, and finally kind of came through and turned it around. But it absolutely is. It's about finding God, the universe, source,
100%.
whatever you want to call the creator.
The creator, man.
it's a beautiful relationship to have when you realize it's right there for you, no
100%.
matter where you are in life.
So
no matter
for me,
what
as
you're doing.
as an Orthodox Jew, brother, so I grew up as a Reformed Jew, and what that means is similar to Christianity or Catholicism. It's just, there's certain sects, there's certain denominations where you're just not taught anything. You're not. It's really how I was brought up, and all you're taught, not even about a relationship with God. It's about like, you eat at this time, or you do this at that time, or it's not even structure based. It's like the Christians who only celebrate Christmas, don't go to church, don't do anything, don't live their life a certain way, right? So as far as Reformed Judaism, it's totally inverting the Bible, and which is it's almost better. There's a lot of arguments. I've had great conversations with some extremely successful rabbis about this, and they'll tell me, like, in most cases you're better off growing up without the idea and concept of religion than one that's manipulated or watered down. Because most people, look, I'm grateful that I was able to take a little bit from it and build on it, but most of my friends that I grew up with, they have no moral compass in general. And as someone who grew up and saw that to now, I mean, I keep the Sabbath, I keep kosher, I keep all our holidays, I'm praying multiple times a day. I knew what I was missing out on, so I was able to find that, but most didn't. But the reason I wanted to say that is I love what you said is, mostly Christianity, mostly Islam and Catholicism. It typically is our belief is the way to God, and it's almost gate kept. It's a lot of the time God is gate kept.
Yes.
Whereas what I love what you said, and a lot of friends, they come up to me now especially, and they say, "Is it okay that I believe in God without religion?" I say, "It's incredible that you believe in God without a religion." I say that I get chills thinking about it, because that's how, not only is that my path, that's how I grew up to some degree. That was more so not about my upbringing, but just, that was, God always gave me this kind of divine feeling that I was always in his presence. But I love to hear that story, because I do not love, even in Judaism too, I do not love, there are certain sects, ultra religious, that they wouldn't even accept me. So the point is God is gate kept in many, many avenues and weaponized. And I have a record, if you haven't checked it out, look it up after, called Make God Cool Again.
I will.
And it's all about that exact concept. It's about how God is for all of us, no matter what, and you can't tell me, assuming you're living, a somewhat righteous lifestyle, you can't be running off and just excusing your life and say, well,
stepping on people's heads.
Yeah, okay, well, God supports that, and
because that's a separation. That's not the same thing. Those
100%.
acts make you separate.
So that record, it talks about the weaponization of God versus just truly living a way of life without. You don't have to go to a church. You don't have to go to a temple. You don't have to go to a mosque. God is not confined to one location. So I think it's beautiful what you said, that you found the creator. Bro, I'll sit in the most hippie, assuming we're not, this is where I draw the line, assuming people aren't worshiping the sun and the stars and the moon.
Right.
And it's like, assuming you realize that there is an almighty creator that created all of this.
Sure.
The same way a chef created your meal, the same way the car person fixed your car, the same way whatever. If we as humans can comprehend that, why do we draw the line at, like, okay, well, there's this one story, and then I'd love to, whatever else you have for me.
Of course.
But I've been reading this book called Pillars of Faith, and it talks about the difference between he's a doctor and a scientist. He's also a religious Jew, but he talks about how 50% of his colleagues are atheists and 50% are not, and which is crazy. 1 in 2. That's like pretty darn nuts. But he said this story where he had a plastic solar system on his desk, like one of these plastic model solar systems. And this is the believer. This is the the person of faith. He has this model solar system, and the atheist guy comes in. One of his colleagues comes in, and he says, "Oh, who made that model? I love it." And then the believer, he said, "Nobody made it." That's what he said. And then the guy, that he understood that he was kind of messing with him. And then he said, oh, come on, somebody had to have made this model solar system. Like, tell me who made it. I want to get one. And the guy's like, no one made it. He kept doubling down. And it was this guy can wrap his head around the fact, even though he didn't see it get made in a Chinese factory or whatever, he enjoyed the fact that somebody, manufactured and created this beautiful model solar system, but the one it was modeled after was not created by anybody.
Right. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
The power of belief systems, and it's an incredible thing. It can be the greatest blessing, and also it can be a curse in many ways, because you get kind of locked into a very tunnel way of thinking, and that's my, my biggest problem with religions, particularly the Abrahamic religions, is that, you know, there are wonderful human beings who have found a way to have that in their life and also coexist and love their human family. But there's a large majority of them that, you know, have a problem with their human family's beliefs, even though, you know, they're I mean, in many cases they're just slightly different.
100%. It's all a remix.
Yeah, and then they're willing to fight and kill each other over it. And that's my biggest problem with, because religion, you know, I mean, it came from government in a lot of ways.
Sure.
You know, if you go back to the way that the pharaohs were considered deities, and the Romans loved that idea. They were like, we could do that. What if Caesar could be, you know, and then that transformed into the Pope. You know, you have this living deity, and everyone's going to do what he says because we just told you that's pretty much, you treat him like he's God on earth. You know,
100%.
And so it became a way to get people to do what the state wanted. And you know, I think there's still a lot of that underpinnings in people who get too caught up in, well, it's my way or the highway. You know,
100%. Well, you know, before, this is another thing I bring up to someone like you or some of my friends who in recent times asked me that question. You know, is it okay to, you know, believe in God and have a relationship with God with an organized religion? And I said it's incredible. But if you look back into time before, you know, before the Bible was written or given or any of these things, whatever the belief system is, you know, there was still a set of laws. There was still Noahide law. You know, there was still like universal laws. So that's why I get excited when people bring that up to me. Is all you need, in my opinion. Look, anyway, I'm still not going to hate an atheist. I'm still not going to hate, you know, I'm not going to start turning it into now that's your religion versus mine or lack of. But ultimately, is, you know, in my opinion, all you need is to live by a set of universal laws where, like, as we taught, don't kill, don't, you know, 10 commandments, don't kill, don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie,
don't hurt anyone,
don't start eating each other and live blood and all this, you know, don't start hurting, treat your neighbor how you'd want to be treated and things like that, right? These universal laws. And then you have some sort of relationship with God. Like, you can't tell me that I'm not going to hell. You can't tell me that I'm going to hell if that's my relationship with him. Right. You know what I mean? So that's always been a turnoff to me with certain people. But I genuinely am loving that a lot more people are waking up and having this great awakening, when it seemed like, to bring it fully home to what we talked about, when it seemed like they were trying to do this great massive reset. You know about the WAF, Klaus Schwab, obviously. You don't have to tell you. You know all about this. And it seems like it backfired. It seems like the fake news, what they were doing against Trump, MK Ultra, Operation Mockingbird, it seemed like all these things kind of backfired with technology advancing. And, you know, they were hoping that AI was going to be a massive tool in order to manipulate people the same way media is. In reality, you look at Elon Musk, you look at X, you look at all these this acquisition that just happened, and you see a lot more people waking up to corruption and waking up to, and I don't know where that heads or what it looks like, and I'm sure there's going to be a fight for the next couple of decades in how that's going to be looking and who controls what. But ultimately, man, I see that it's a beautiful outcome and it's a beautiful ending for all of us.
I have more hope than ever for what you just said, and you know, as much as I don't and I can't ever trust government entirely.
Sure.
Or maybe not, I should say, in any way. But you know, when you have people like Bobby Kennedy and then Trump, who did not spend his life, you know, in politics or Washington, and, you know, has a little better understanding of what the American people are about and what they want, and why the government is completely out of control and bankrupt. And, you know, so if we're going to go the route of, okay, we're stuck with government, then it needs massive reform, because the corruption is wholesale. So, and then, you know, just to touch back on what you said, it's funny because growing up, I never understood the concept. I mean, I was taught it, you know, about hell and about cardinal sins. I was an altar boy, for God's sakes, unscathed, thank God.
Thank God.
But you know, like I was like, and I was listening to someone talk, and he wasn't bad mouthing religion in any way, but he said, "Come on," he said, "Do you honestly?" He said, "Who has children?" And I raised my hand, and he said, "Tell me, for a second, could you ever conceive, no matter what your child did, could you ever conceive of banishing that child
from existence
to eternal suffering?"
Yeah.
And I was like, No.
100%.
No. I'm gonna love my children. No matter, they could take my life, and I'm gonna love them to my last breath.
Wow.
That's how I'm wired. That's how I think. And then he said, "Do you honestly believe the Creator is less merciful, than you, or has less empathy?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" It just made so much sense to me, and was such a like a face palming. Like, of course not. But that's part of the some of the fear mongering that has
100%.
become part of those religions. So I just thought that worth sharing. I know you have.
No, I appreciate that, man. It's I'm actually gonna tell my wife that after. We always have these. It's less religious. It's more philosophical and more these spiritual conversations all the time, and it's a beautiful thing, man. And the Jewish belief actually is that hell is more like a prison sentence. The same way, as you said, like if your child did X, Y, and Z, first of all, that's beautifully put. You're absolutely right. If my kid did the worst things, possibly you can conceive, I would still love that human no matter what, even if it's a strange way of love and a strange, way of looking at it. But yeah, the Jewish belief is it's more of like, depending, like similar to jail right now. If you do something terrible, you're in there for 25 years. If you do something petty, you're in there for a year. And Gehinom is what it's called in Hebrew, and it translates loosely to like washing machine, and it's essentially it washes you away. It's almost like if you didn't get it right here, you're going to be forced to get it right there. But there's no option of not getting it right ever. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So
you're not damned for eternity.
No, you are going to be given it right because, as we said, because your father loves you no matter what, and in that, God forbid, the situation of your kids or my kids doing something terrible, guess what? They're still not above, the law. They're so it's the same way over there. It's like, we can't just. I had a conversation with. I'm always in these circles with, my trainer is Christian, and then I talk to so I love to get all these, perspectives. Yeah. And my trainer always, we have these different philosophical conversations, but we always kind of come to the same conclusion that, even though God is a forgiving, merciful God, it's still the same way your kids or my kids should still have a certain level of not fear that you're going to beat them or hit them, but fear that they're going to disappoint you. So they still want to live a certain way of life. They still, it's not an excuse. Okay, you know what? I know God's forgiving, ever forgiving. He's merciful. So now I can
of course not. Yeah.
wipe my hands clean. And some people look at it like that. So the point is like it's like anything else, right? You need to take the good with the bad. You can't live too radically left. You can't live too radically right. You can't live too within the confines of government, what they tell you to do. Otherwise, we saw what happens. And you can't live too like anarchist, like government's everything's terrible. Let's burn it down.
Right.
So you have to everything we've given.
Black pilled, they call those guys the black pills.
But I think you were to some degree. I think everyone who becomes red pilled goes through a black pilled process.
Yeah.
And it all depends on how. Do you get out of that? And do I think it takes a certain level of faith, because a lot of those people who are black pilled, everything's a movie. Trump's in it on it. Elon Musk is terrible.
Everything is a psyop. Everything.
They're all controlled opposition. We're doomed.
There's
all doomed.
No hope whatsoever.
There's no hope at all. So
burn it all down.
You have to go through that to get to the point of, okay, you know what? There are a lot of terrible people, the Bill Gateses of the world, the Soroses of the world. There are a lot of awful people, but you have to also believe that God put these people in certain moves, like similar to a chessboard. I believe more so, instead of like this very black-pilled outlook, Elon and Trump and Musk and Soros and Rothschild, they all sit down for dinner secretly and none of us know about it, and they all have these magical plans to ruin our lives. It's like, wait a minute, no. I think that truly what's happening is that we are seeing billionaires arguing over what's right and wrong, arguing over good and evil, arguing over, like, if I was a billionaire right now, think about your worst friend and your best friend, the most righteous person you knew and the worst person you knew growing up that you still were friends with, right? The one who got locked up, who did the wildest things, the one cheated, stealing, whatever. If you gave that average everyday person billions of dollars, he might be more like the Bill Gateses of the world, right? And if you gave somebody like me billions and billions of dollars, I'm going to be shooting rockets into the sky, and I'm going to be inventing things to beat cancer, and I'm going to be doing wild things, but that's what I feel is right. And ultimately, I think that's where we are. Realistically, you got the Cubans of the world versus the Trumps and the Elons versus the this and the Rothschilds versus the this, and so it's like it's not as Illuminati and like we're all in on it as all these people love to think. It's very sad that people live their life like that. You got to have faith.
No, you got to have faith. You got to have hope. I mean, you got to put your attention on the outcome that you want. You cannot be stuck on just doom scrolling and that is a recipe for disaster. Yes. I understand and have experienced the power of each and every one of us to to create events and shape our reality in a way. And I believe that was one of the greatest gifts, God has given us with this sentient life and this awesome technology of human body that we have is, we have that divine spark in us, and we can use it to create in our life in a positive way. And it's a great point you make about there's bad apples in every batch, one or two. Some people are, and particularly when they're indoctrinated into that way.
Yep.
And while I do believe that at the highest levels, there is certainly, you could call a global conspiracy to control the nations and the people of the planet.
Absolutely.
That is being thrust upon people, mostly by trillionaires and their billionaire gophers. But you do have some people going against the grain and rallying millions of others to go against the grain. And every time they play whack-a-mole, when they come out and they do this totalitarian tiptoe, like they did in 2020, where they just completely throw caution to the wind and overplay their hand.
Yep.
Everyone's like, wait a minute. All of a sudden people are slapped in the face and they're like, this is completely fucked up. This is messed up.
Because prior to that, they were going inch by inch, right? And when you encroach on people's freedoms and rights inch by inch, you don't actually think about it. Patriot Act.
It's like the boiling frog.
Right, 100%. You have no idea until it's too late. You're already cooked. And when they do a little bit of legislation here and there, or like an amendment, we don't really pay attention to it. And it's like, okay, we don't really pay too much attention. And if you go back to our parents or our grandparents' generation, there was really only one or two media sources, and they weren't even competing. It was they were preaching the same nonsense.
Right.
And I love talking to all my grandparents are gone now, but at the time I would ask them questions like, was it divisive? Because all they saw Trump was people, when something happens, whether it's divisive or negative or some catastrophe, people want to find one thing to blame instead of a multitude of things to blame. So if I'm depressed or I'm anxious and I'm not taking accountability, I'm going to blame my wife, or I'm going to blame my son, or I'm going to blame my dad or my mom, instead of looking introspectively and saying, maybe I'm to blame to some degree, maybe this government a little bit is, maybe the president a little bit, and this senator. And so people love to blame one thing. So when they see divisiveness, everyone was like, well, what's new? Oh, Trump. So Trump must be the reason that all this is happening, instead of, well, the media, the way they're looking at him, or the way that, I've introspect, like you said, the way that I've been thinking about him, or the way that my family's been talking. Like, it's never, everyone wants one thing, the same way we talked about one pill to get skinny or one pill to blah, blah, blah. In reality, you need to go to the gym, and you need to get sober, and you need to eat healthy, and there's never one answer for these complicated things in life. And, yeah, I think that, when I talk to my elders, like I said, gone now, but when I would talk to my grandparents, they would always say, when I was sitting down at the dinner table, we never cared who voted for Reagan or who voted for, whatever. Right. But that actually was kind of ignorant, because it's nice, but it also, ultimately, all of these people were living under the spell of one thing, and under the spell of one media and one they were the start of this concept of brainwashing and MK Ultra and Operation Mockingbird, and seeing our grandparents lived without a TV and with a TV. So could you imagine, the same way we lived without phones and with phones? I actually have this is my phone, bro. I don't have a smartphone. So
nice.
So point being, I contact you through my wife's phone, and so in case I need to do that. But the point is like, could you imagine if we think what happened with AI and technology, and if we think that's so controlling and manipulative, imagine what the first television did to people. Imagine, imagine what the first turning it on, and why would they lie to me? It's just MSNBC. Right. It's just CNN. It's just Fox. They don't lie to me,
Yeah, that's true. It's a great point, man. Imagine the people, how marvelous it was to people. They were just like, oh my God, this little box creates images. Like,
and they wouldn't lie. It's the government, and it's coming through this incredibly awesome thing that they just gave to us and we bought. And you have to make your kids sit there and change the dial. And it's like, wait a minute. So they wouldn't lie. Like, no one could even conceive that.
They used to have fireside chats, remember?
Yeah.
I mean,
no one could conceive that, bro. It's like they wouldn't even say, well, they're not lying to me, right? They wouldn't even think about it.
No, and it's the older the generation, the harder this time has been for them to turn it off. Like I finally got my mom to stop watching the news, thank God.
Oh man, amazing! How'd you do that? I was
like, Mom, you watch shows like Narco and at night you watch all these shows that are so
anxiety, anxious.
I don't anymore. I can't. I'm at the point now where I have no interest in being kept up at night. Is it a good show? Maybe, but I'm not. I don't want to be at midnight tossing and turning. Yeah. But she finally turned off the news. And I remember my dad said to me during the lockdowns, and he had bought into the science. He had bought into the sales pitch, I should say, and he was just really encouraging me. And I know I know the place he was coming from.
Sure.
He thought he was trying to save my life.
I'm the same boat.
To get that and to get my kids that. And I said, I had to just tell him, like, I'm going to take care of my family, the way that I know how. And the way that I know how to do that is to not let them anywhere near this. That's my intuition. And I have researched this issue for years, even before this went down. I had found Bobby Kennedy in about 2018, and I really got an education. And then all this happened, and I was like, oh my God. Thank God he was given the microphone when he was. But, fast forward, my dad, we moved to Georgia out of Manhattan because, we live in a society where they make the kids, get these things. And there's no exemptions in New York. There's no medical exemptions.
No religious, nothing.
No religious. Forget about it. You got to
too long gone.
You got to be the Pope's, grand nephew to have that. I mean, nobody gets them. And Bobby Kennedy told everyone. He said they're coming. New York is coming after. They're going to do away with not only religious exemptions but medical exemptions as well.
Scary, man.
And they did.
That's scary.
So scary and so not right. It kind of ridiculous. You have a child who has probably had reactions before, and then you're going to make them suffer through this again. It wasn't
bad enough.
And fast forward about, I don't know, maybe a year later, and my dad said to me, he just said flat out, I love my dad. He's like, listen, I'm old, all right? Me and your mother are old. We believe in stupid stuff like vaccines.
That's funny how they worded it.
And I was like, fair enough, Dad. Fair enough. I understand. He was like, "What do you want from us?"
Dude, I had the same story, bro. It's I come from, like I said, I come from this liberal upbringing where everything was about trusting, which is it was weird because it was opposite. My family protested the Vietnam War, and it's like you would think like it's just strange, like this cultural shift that we saw is. These people that were anti-government, anti-war, all these things,
free speech, anti-war, anti-corporation.
Even my 100% that, and even my mom growing up, bro, we were very we had a lot of holistic medicines and options, but this must be the what we talk about, this brainwashing that we're talking about, where you're taking somebody that's like this and you're turning him to like that. It's almost unexplainable, and. But I was the same way. My grandma, before she passed, it's a shame that was some of our last conversations. Jesse, please get vaccinated. I want you to be healthy. Because she's believing the things. And my mom's a nurse 40 years, and she's doing the same things. And meanwhile, I work from home. I'm home all day. I'm healthy. I'm trying to have these conversations. My whole family's triple, quadruple, quintuple vaccinated. I didn't have a kid at the time, so thank God. It wasn't even more of that pressure. You have to do X, Y, and Z. But me and my wife, we were able to kind of. Dance around this because we were able to stay home, and not everyone was in those circumstances. A lot of people had to go get vaccinated to just get their meal ticket and eat. And obviously, do you still have that chance? Do you still have that option? Sure, but it's a lot harder when they say we didn't force anyone. Well, you forced them to, otherwise you'll take away their paycheck.
That's such gaslighting. It's so infuriating. How can you say that?
And it 100% is gaslighting. It's all liability, and it's disgusting. And yeah, man. And I was able to do my own. Like I said, I was able to approach these people, my family, everyone else, I literally became like Robert Malone was at my wedding. Like we would go out.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Robert Malone's like, I have his book somewhere over here. And like, he was literally almost like my mentor. Like I was looking at him like an uncle or a father figure for years. And we would, anytime we linked up at all these events, we were always the first people to connect before we connected with anybody else. And, him and his wife, they felt like we were like their kids, like essentially, they have children, but, I think I don't know if he's publicly talked about it. I don't know if they all agree politically and what's going on with the world with stuff like that. But they look at us like kids that like were really awake and like their children. And Malone was at my wedding, and we became really friendly. And so anytime my wife's in labor and I'm texting Malone, is is this okay? Is that bad?
Yeah.
Is that bad? Is this so good? And he's like, you know, and I say, I'm assuming all liability. Don't worry, doc. You can text me.
You gotta say that.
Doctors are worried, obviously. But then he writes back, oh, I wouldn't do this. I would do that. I wouldn't do that. Whatever. But yeah, that's how close we were and are. And, you know, so when I have someone like that who has 10 patents with mRNA and DNA, you know, vaccine technology, and I can go to a person like that and ask these questions, and Harvard graduate and all these things, postgraduate, and I'm sitting here like, and you know, then my mom, who once again I understand, but it's like, oh, you're getting your information from MSNBC and CNN and like some talking head doctor that you met, and I'm
paid
getting
for
my
by the
information.
pharmaceuticals.
I'm getting my information from the horse's mouth. You know what I mean?
Right.
But no, I'm getting my information from a quack, and you're getting your information from trusted news sources. It's
Right.
like it really felt like I feel like gaslighting has to be when someone's aware of it, but it was just so strange because like everything was inverted, man. Every good was evil, evil was, but long story long again, you know, talking about what we said a second ago is I think they took a little bit too much too quickly, and it woke up you, it woke up me. If they were like, just get vaccinated, it's for your health, but you don't have to, and maybe you can go on your own terms. Like maybe I would have.
No, they were like, there's only going to be one solution.
Yeah, they were like,
I was like, wait a minute, you don't even. Didn't you just say you just have no idea what this thing is? And it just, how can you know what the solution is? Maybe, like, I was like, wait, what? And they're all saying the same thing. And I was like, am I the only one fucking, you know, pulling my hair out here? Like,
you felt like you were in the Matrix, bro, in the Twilight. I felt like Neo, bro, and I felt like I was the only one out of the Matrix. And I felt like it was like the Twilight Zone, bro. And having you know, started becoming more religious, I started really realizing that, especially in my community, in the Jewish community, it happens in every community, but especially in the Jewish community, there's this Stockholm syndrome for communism. And that's why like 67% of people still down ballot no matter what. Trump's the Nazi, Trump this, Trump that. Trump. I got married in Mar-a-Lago, bro. Trump was at
I
my
know, I was
wedding.
going to ask you about that.
So yeah, well, I'm happy to talk about it. So like the point is like, you know, on top of Trump and his daughter and his son-in-law and his grandkids, like I'm sure he sneaks in his grandkids' room and draws swastikas on their head in their spare time. So like the point is you know, there's these people that they just will never wake up because, you know, they come from communism, they come from communist,
indoctrinated,
from USSR, Russia, they come from Poland, like all of Eastern Europe and Europe in general, especially all of 1900s, was basically communism, you know, and I looked into it and I was like, wait a minute, so they're asking me to show me my papers in America. I'm like, this sounds oddly familiar. You know, I had actual grandparents' numbers on their arms. I had grandparents that got Purple Hearts. My grandpa got a Purple Heart for liberating concentration camps. I see all these things, and I'm sitting here like, wait a minute, this is eerily familiar that you're telling me I can't eat in this restaurant. And you know, this is the funniest thing that happened to me. So I was performing all over Europe, and I started coming out against mandates and COVID and all the lockdowns and things like that. And the one country that won't let me, an Orthodox Jew, Germany will not let me come to their country to perform. And I'm like, this is extremely full circle. I know you're not telling me to throwing me to, but it shows you just how ridiculously it's like Pac-Man. My homie Zuby said this once to me. We were on tour too, and he says when you go out, it's like Pac-Man. When you go too far left, you end up on the far right. When you go too far right, you end up on the far left. It's not like a circle. It's just like whoop whoop whoop. You go boom boom boom. Yeah. And it's the same concept. It's so German was so far. You can call them a national socialist. If people argue that it was far left or far right, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is they ended up on one side and they ended up on the other, all in the name of inclusivity and love. Right. And it's like, wait a minute. So it's like now I can't perform there. I wouldn't have been able to perform there 80 years ago for a different reason.
Right. It's the opposite reason, probably.
It's just strange, man. It's just strange.
It is.
Because why? I'm concerned. They actually wrote, they said, we don't want anyone performing. It was almost on a country level. It was every agency, everything. They were like, we don't want anyone performing here who's pro-gun and pro-Trump. And I was like, wait a minute, but being pro-gun could have actually saved my grandparents. So I'm sitting here like, you're going to tell me, a Jew in America, that I can't arm myself. I'm like, thank you anyway. I don't need to come to your stupid ass country.
Right. Germany, it amazes me because they're really extreme in so many ways. Their laws and their stance, and they don't realize that they have that it's fascist, it's fascism. Yeah. You know, it's they can call it whatever they want. They can do it in the name of whatever they want. But they're quick to bust out the baton and start cracking people over the head and shutting things down. And I'm like, Germany, I thought we learned this lesson, you know, but
they tried so hard to overcorrect their ways where it became a religion in and of itself where, you know, even if you can call it woke, you can call it whatever you want, but, you know, it's almost like the same way I have a religion, or even you have your version of religion, you know,
Right.
your belief system, you know, they have their belief system, except there's no doctrine, there's no set of laws, which is scary. So it's like you have these group of people coming together
Yeah.
for the greater good of their beliefs, but there's no principles or guiding moral compass. So it's
Right.
extremely scary. And like I said, like, sure, people can be weaponizing in Christianity or Judaism or any of these Abrahamic religions, Islam, but ultimately it's like the most of the people live their lives according to the Noahide laws and the commandments. And like I said,
That's right.
So these people, though, they come together for this belief system, but then there's no doctrine. There's no constitution of laws, you know?
No. And in fact, you know, those seeds in the German government come from
100%.
You know, basically Stalin's Russia.
Yep.
Because we didn't want, you know, part of our deal with Stalin, by the way, it's hard for me to imagine anyone who's allies with Stalin as, quote, the good guys in the
Sure,
scenario. I don't know if there were any good guys, but
No, you're
because
right.
Stalin is just, talk about, you know, psychopathic mass murdering maniac. You know, but we were like, part of our arrangement with him, if he was going to come in the war with us, was like, yeah, well, you know, we'll make sure that we give you at least half of what the spoils of German and so their government was very much left in, which was, you know, a communist, very, you know, atheistic, moralless
Society.
And that's what was left as the seeds. Now they've had to, you know, conform a little bit because they're part of NATO and they're part of Europe, but at the same time, obviously we see the symptoms of them holding on to those roots.
Well, you know what? It would be ignorant. I think we read these things in textbooks and we assume when someone wins or loses, they're good or bad, which is not the case in general. That's the first point.
Right.
But, you know, the same way now people are like, maybe the Nazis were good. I'm like, let's not go that far, buddy. And also they'll say things like, you know, maybe the you know, not always, like back in the day, we would only believe the winner was right because they won. And now you have this woke society, the opposite, where the underdog, the loser's right now. So it's totally everything's inverted, no matter what. You know what I mean? So Nazis were maybe right, and maybe Ukraine is actually, you know, they're great, and it's like, wait a minute, just because people are losing a war, don't get me wrong, everyone loses in war. So I don't want you to say the loser or winner.
That's right.
But ultimately, when somebody is taking the brunt of it more than the other country, now you have, you know, ultra lefties that are like, we need to support these people, and it's like, maybe they're bad too. You know, maybe just because someone wins.
They were on our neo-Nazi terrorist list right before the war broke out.
100%. And there's so many things that people love to exactly like that love to overlook, and it's either black or white and good or evil. And in reality, we do live in this gray area. And the reason I wanted to bring it up about, you know, do we think that, okay, Nazi Germany, okay, they lose, right? Russia kind of ends the war, and do we just assume that ideology went away as they lost?
Right.
Like when you lose something, like we didn't wipe out a whole civilization, God forbid, I would never want that. But we didn't wipe out an ideology, or like people just kind of went into their, they call it Operation Paperclip. That's a whole nother one if you ever looked into it.
Of course.
They sent the doctors and the scientists all around the world. And if you look into what's going on right now with most of these pharmaceutical companies, and I want to let people know that when I have these conversations, when I talk about Israel, I'm not talking about Israelis. When I talk about Gaza or Palestinians or Americans or Germans, I'm talking about the government. And I think people need to always draw that line in the sand, because a lot of the times, not only do they not mention that, but they actually do end up trickling down to saying the Jews, the blacks, the gays, it's like, no. We're talking about the corporations that use the gays or the trans or the Jews or the this or the black or the minor. We're talking about the government that uses these people's emotions, not the people themselves, right? So most pharmaceutical companies, Merck, a lot of these vaccines, a lot of Roundup, a lot of these crazy things are German, bro. A lot of these crazy. It's so the point is it didn't just disappear overnight. It actually expanded the ideology, and it's not gas chambers and bread lines anymore. It's the things that we just in our daily lives. It's our water and our food and our pesticides and what they're spraying in the air and our vaccines and it's a lot more nefarious, but a lot more inconspicuous.
They've gotten really, really clever at camouflaging their tactics, you know, scary clever.
Because most humans, they're not going to, no matter if you're Trump or like, they're not going to be okay with us just sending somebody into a gas chamber right now. Humans, like, no matter how much propaganda they do, most of us are going to push back against that. But most of us are going to argue over, well, maybe the vaccine, this one's vaccine's good or that one's not.
You convince them it's for their own good, and then they'll take it willingly. I think Kissinger even said that. I think Kissinger is on record saying that.
I'm sure.
Saying that when we get this right, everyone will line up for it. And part of the indoctrination that these people get is based in eugenics, and this is very hard for people, everyday people who are good-hearted by nature, to grasp the level of indoctrination that comes with Bill Gates admitting the fact that he was like, and I heard this interview. It's in an archive. I got to get the name of the archive. He talked about how when he was 10 years old, his parents sat him down and they had the first of many conversations about eugenics.
I've seen this.
And I'm like, does anyone know what eugenics is? You know what he just said? This is the man who is parading around Africa with vaccines, and he was a computer guy, stole the technology, made untold fortune, and now his concern is, quote, healthcare? And his wife is giving out prophylactics in Africa, and he's giving out vaccines. I wonder what their agenda is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and people are so in support of these things because look at old jolly old Mr. Rogers with the sweater on. He's taking care of African people who don't have clean sewage. And it's like, wait a minute, that if that was the case, we would just let the Peace Corps go in there, clean the water, do normal. Like, I think we already have that covered. In fact, as you've seen, FEMA doesn't let people go in and do charitable, philanthropic things unless it's gate kept and behind, these corporations and these shell companies, whatever. But yeah, there was this incredible meme. I'm sure you saw it. It was like the health expert, and it showed Bill Gates, and then Bobby Kennedy, the conspiracy theorist. And it's like. It's just really wild, bro. And to go off your point about the eugenics thing, I got to bounce in a couple minutes. But if you have any last minute questions, I'd love to answer them. But it talks about the eugenics, and Bill Gates' either father or grandfather was on the board of Planned Parenthood. And then Margaret Sanger, she's on record. There's videos of back in the day when the TV first came out, and there's still black and white videos of them saying, we're basically, if you're epileptic, you should abort your baby. Epileptic. If you have epilepsy, you should abort your baby. So like that's how bad it was. If you have epilepsy, you should abort your baby. If you can't afford your baby, you should abort your baby. They even said if you're not well read, if you're not intelligent enough, you should also abort your baby. But they convinced you that it was for you, and this was on TV. And like they didn't have to. Like I said, if the TV turned on and they said it, then they didn't have to convince you any reason. Oh, if you do this, you should do that. If you do that,
programming,
you should do this.
Right there.
So that's all it was.
Literally.
They didn't have to act like that. That was the first one, just telling you what it is.
They don't call it programming for nothing.
They knew most people would believe it, and they actually were handing out. Planned Parenthood started off as, like you said, handing out prophylactics, and it even says, even on Wikipedia, right there, to curb population, growth, the growth of population.
Inner cities, that's where they put them.
And inner cities is when they started, and now you have people willingly, like you said, Kissinger, willingly lining up to do it themselves in the name of healthcare. And I always, just like Trump, just like the Torah says, I am always going to be in support of the mother's life, rape, incest. There are always questions. I'm not all or nothing, but I think it is extremely strange when people will line up for their rights to be taken away. When in China, you couldn't have more than one daughter until recently. So I always say, sure, do we have to choose one or the other? No, not right now. But what would you choose if you had to? Choosing to abort your baby, or Handmaid's Tale? Oh, conservatives are the Handmaid's Tale. Blah 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 blah. It's like
that's a giant propaganda
super
psyop as well. The feminist movement was hijacked, and this became, and this was another wildly successful, psyop that they have ran on, and is now so ingrained in people. The notion, and I don't think, and obviously it's super effective because there is truth to it. It is a woman's body. It is her choice. In the end, you cannot stop her. She's going to be able to do what she wants.
Absolutely.
The question is, is she going to be able to do it in a way that is safe? Because and that's nature, and we see nature. You can look at animals, the population. If there's not enough food, if there's stress, that baby will abort. It will miscarriage. It is also part of nature. But human beings, because we're conscious and we have such control of our environment most of the time, it becomes a choice. And I'm with you. I don't have I believe it has to be the woman's choice because it's her body. And I believe that if it was a man's body who's had to go through this, then there would be no question about whose choice it was, right? I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, it wouldn't be up for debate, you know. But the fact that it's women, I think that there's a middle ground, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be exceptions, and there should be some rules which protect the life of the baby,
Sure.
you know, as it gets to a certain point. But at the same time, you have to give a woman the right to autonomy over her body.
Sure,
it's
like
her body.
I don't think I'm totally against, you know, it being like you're going to be in prison. Like, but I also it's funny because the same way they went from calling it global warming to climate change, right? So like they weren't sure if we're gonna freeze to death or burn to death.
Right.
Like now it's a lot wider of a
safer with climate
it's a
change.
safer thing. So
Can't go wrong.
We can scare people and still raise money. Wow, this is
That's
the
right.
coldest winter ever. This is the hottest summer ever. So something I
Due to
also
climate
noticed-
change.
Something I also noticed with this go around, man, is last go around. The abortion discussion was only around rape. That was it. Well, what if I'm raped? What if I'm raped? What if I'm raped? And
Right.
then the truth got out that rape was less than 1%, and a lot of people were like, okay, well, I guess I can't really argue that as much. And this go around was, well, a miscarriage, I'm going to be arrested if I get a miscarriage or something like that, because one person, somewhere in some
So much
place,
propaganda.
you know, essentially, had a miscarriage in a certain place. Like she was, I don't even know the full story, but
Right.
it's never the full story. It's never
No.
what you know.
No.
Ultimately, it wasn't somebody getting arrested for a miscarriage. It was because it was something else and vandalism and a runaway teen and something else that happened. And it was like it was a truancy, whatever it is, right? Something that happened. And so I actually just shared a whole video. Elon Musk just shared it the other day. It went stupid viral on his Twitter, and it had like hundreds of millions of views. And it basically was the person in court where they were saying, you know, they do these things all the time where they sit down Zuckerberg or they sit down whoever, and you know, but they basically sat down this person. They said, is there any state, 50 states, where a person will be arrested
That's
for
right.
miscarrying? No. Is there blah
No.
blah blah for aborting before? No. And it just went on blah blah blah, and it showed you that the propaganda shifts as the belief system shifts. Okay, well, we can't sell them on the rape one anymore because they don't believe it as much. Okay, so now we're going to sell them on people are going to go to jail for miscarrying. So that's going to get them to the polls to vote for a certain way. But yeah,
That's
ultimately,
right.
as we said, is no, I don't think a woman, because a woman is by nature in control of her body. You know, as we just
That's
said,
right.
there, no one else is. God and her. That's it. If a miscarriage happens, that's God, right?
That's right.
But beyond that, it's not a doctor's. It's not anything. But I think it drew the line for me when I had my own kid, in a sense of not legislation, but in a sense of morality, in a sense of you know, late-term abortions are unacceptable in my opinion.
Yeah.
Abortion as a form of birth control, when you have birth control, when you have the
Right.
after pill, when you have a 6-week after pill, when you have condoms, when you have abstinence, when you have all these things, that's where I started drawing the line. I started realizing that hookup, I was a part of this world, you know, realizing hookup culture and sex out of wedlock,
Right.
and just, you know, having sex with a woman you just met at the bar and getting like, I realized how rare it is to actually get pregnant, how tough it is once I started
Right.
trying
It's
to
a
do it.
lot harder than people think.
So then I started realizing that getting pregnant, you know, with the few exceptions, is actually a blessing if you start reading about being fruitful and multiplying, and assuming your husband or boyfriend or whatever is not beating you and you're not in a domestic
Right.
issue, assuming you're in a fairly peaceful issue, a scenario. There's almost no reason. 75% of abortions are because people are scared they don't have enough money.
Right.
And we pay, not we, they're paying people $15,000 for the livers of babies and the limbs of babies.
Oh,
Why?
yeah.
You could give that money to the person to keep their child and to have them for a whole year of
Oh,
rent.
yeah. There's definitely another way to do it.
The point is, there's so many scary, evil. It's a lot worse than you think. And my anger came with the celebratory nature of it, which isn't very often, but it's that duality. It's if these old men are going to support me, then I'm going to tell you how many abortions I've got and how excited I am to get
Right.
them. You know, so it's this duality, and it's this balance of nature,
Yeah.
where I started having problems with that, with the celebratory aspect of it, the use of it as far as and like I said, this is not me lining up saying like we need to ban abortion fully.
Right.
It's never been a conversation of legislation for me. It's been a conversation of morality, and a conversation the same way I would tell you about drugs or sex or
Right.
beliefs. That's just my belief system, you know?
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. You know, life is sacred.
That's exactly
And that's
right.
why, you know, they had to bring in the question of when life begins.
100%.
Because without that question, then it becomes a no-brainer. Then there's no debate, you know. And the reason why people don't see eye to eye on it is because some have been convinced that life starts at X point, and other people are convinced that no, it only starts at X point. But
Right.
if we could get everyone to agree on the time when
seems
life
like
begins, that would change the conversation.
I think we're kind of coming to some agreement where a lot of us, most people, including liberals, do not agree with late-term abortions. It's been polled even by right-wing and left-wing media that most people don't agree with late-term abortions, and most people also don't agree with an outright ban of abortion. So it seems like most of us agree that we're somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So if legislation can reflect that, that would be nice.
Well, but then the Democrats wouldn't be able to galvanize the women vote.
Sure.
So,
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
I mean, literally, that's the reason why there's no legislation. But that's another podcast. I had a woman activist on who just said flat out, she's been in this struggle for years trying to get the women's equal rights, the ratification, because it was ratified, but it was never published. The president has to make a phone call and then it's published, and then the ERA goes into effect. So they work their ass off for decades. They get the ERA passed finally, and it's not published because if it was published, it would change the structure of the judicial system and how it has to treat women. So they've been putting it off for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But it's just wild because she'll tell you flat out. She's like, no, there's one party standing in the way of abortion, and it's the Democrats, because they know that if they fixed it, they wouldn't have anything to run on. And I was like, yeah,
it's true. It's true. That's why, whether you believe in election, integrity or not, how much you believe in it. But the same reason Hillary lost, the same reason Kamala lost, is not because they're women, but it's because all they did was appeal to women or try to appeal to women. They didn't try to appeal to the common voter, to even the man, or even the conservative woman. They didn't try to appeal to. They only tried to. So now their demographic is shrinking. I tried to articulate this in many tweets before, but it's like, if you're appealing to all women, maybe you'll win. But now you're only appealing to half the women, and then a quarter of the women, and then so that's why it's like you need to appeal to the truck driver and the construction worker,
and you need to talk about what your solutions instead of just like who you're running against. You know what I mean?
You guys are struggling. I see.
Been a serious lack of that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, if you got anything else for me, but I gotta bounce out of here.
Yeah, bro. I listen, my man. You have 2.5 million subs on YouTube. You built that following single-handedly with your incredible talent and your passion and your music. And I want you to tell everyone where to find you. And I want to tell everyone that if you have not checked out this man's music, his recent stuff is absolutely for everyone.
Thank you.
It's awesome to listen. I was listening to it on my way to school with my 10 and 13-year-old this morning, and my 10-year-old was like, wow, he's really good. That's what he said. That's his exact words. It's a really good song.
No, that's a compliment, man. Yeah, I'm trying always to get all ages, all demographics, man. And I think that's why I've been cursing less in the music, making it a little more family friendly. But yeah, man, you guys can check me out, H-I-R-E-Z, anywhere, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you guys consume your music, H-I-R-E-Z. I'm High-Rez the rapper on social media, is exactly how you would think, H-I-R-E-Z the rapper. And I'm constantly releasing music every couple of weeks and new videos. And my goal is to just spread love and positivity and wake people up to the truth about what we've been lied to over the decades and stuff like that. So if you're into kind of stuff like that, make sure you check me out, and I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Absolutely, bro. It's been awesome, man. If you're listening on audio, please don't forget to leave us a review if you enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. We know that like 75% of you guys are listening but not subscribing. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. Jesse, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate your time. You're awesome, dude.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I know I have to stay on here usually, otherwise it doesn't upload or something. So
yeah, I'll check it out right now.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna turn off my camera and my mic, and then you feel, because I've X'd out of here and I've ruined the whole podcast before. So
okay, brother. Yeah. No, we should be good. Thank you. I appreciate
brother.
You.
Good to see you, man.
Take care.